When this car was new, it was fitted with drum brakes all around. But now, to update it and make the brakes that little bit more efficient, what we're going to do is fit disc brakes to the front brakes. Now, I've already fitted a carrier here. Now, the carrier carries this fella, which is the piston. When fluid pressure is put through to the piston, that squeezes the pads against each other. This slides and squeezes all together and grips onto that disc. And that's what provides the braking. So, what I first need to do though, of course, is grease the bearings, because we have taper roller bearings that fit in there. So I get a gob of grease onto there, I get the palm of my hand, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze it up between those rollers. So you can see it there, the palm of my hand, it's going to squeeze and squidge between there. And there it is, it's just starting to squeeze through now. And that way I know that I've lubricated the whole bearing. I've got to do the outer exactly the same. Use some of this excess grease. I can just see it all squidging through. What I need to do really is change my gloves, but what I will do is use a bit of this excess grease, waste not, want not. We'll just pop it in the middle here, just so that we've got an extra little reservoir of grease. There's the outer race in place. Now all I have to do now is drop the bearing in like so. And there it is, sitting on its track. Now the next problem is that there is grease in there. So what we use to keep that grease in is a seal. And here inside, just to ensure that this sealing edge is kept against this running face here, there is a spring that just provides a little bit of tension that just keeps that on there. In fact, if I just pull that out, you can just about see that. Can you see that? See that spring? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to push that in, and right, what I need to do is just get what's known as a dolly or a seal press and just push that into place, and then that will be all set. Hit it nice and squarely, and that's all the way home. But now this should slide over the stub and straight on. There we are, there it is. So that's that in place. I can now put the outer bearing in, slide that over the stub of the axle, there, like that. Now the nut is actually two nuts, which is a lock nut. So one goes on. Ah, right, actually, this has a left-hand thread. Now, most nuts do up righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. But this one is lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. Now, the idea behind this is that because this wheel spins in this direction most of the time, apart from when you're in reverse, so that if you had a right-hand thread, which is lefty-loosey, that means that this wheel would tend to try and undo these nuts at all times. So the way to get around that is to put a left-hand thread on. Pretty much nothing now. But what I am going to do is I'm going to get a little gauge onto here so that I can determine exactly how much end float I have. So I have to make sure that everything's tightened up. I press that and zero it. Now, if I pull the hub, I should hopefully get a small reading on here. Give it a pull. Okay, 0.1, oh no, 0.082, 0.98. It's just a tiny little bit of end float. Let's just back it off a little bit. Yeah, that's it, 0.002 of an inch. There we go. Right, now that lock nut is bang on in place. So I can take my gauge off. What I can now do is fit the outer nut, which when it binds against the inner one, will lock the pair of them in place. Now this particular one is fitted with a little square hole in the end here, and the speedometer cable has a square bit on the end, and that pokes through this little hole here. A clip goes on to hold it in place, and that is what drives the speedometer as that wheel turns. I've got some brake cleaner here, so I'm just going to spray that onto the disc, because there will still be little bits of grease that are left there in the grooves of the disc. So then what we do is we get the brake pads in, and then they'll go over the disc like so. So I'm just putting a little bit of copper grease on these sliding faces here where the brake pads are going to actually slide, just on here. I don't want to get it on the braking surface because that's going to be no good to anybody. So keeping my hands free, keeping my hands clear from that braking surface there, I insert the pad which sits and slides on that bar there, and conversely the outer pad pops in and slides on like that. Now all we need is to put the caliper in place. That slides over the top. Right, so just tighten those up now. What will happen is we'll connect up this brake line, so when the brake pedal is pressed, and then the fluid that's within the master cylinder will get pushed along the brake lines, along here, through this pipe, and then to behind the piston, which is in the caliper there. That will then move across and squeeze the brake pads, which will prevent this disc from turning. That's how your brakes work.